morning.
Good morning.
Rabbi always starts with Good Shabbos. I just want to thank, of course, the Kollel for arranging and hosting the Shiur and the Shul, for everything that the Shul does for the Kollel. It's really, such a tight relationship between these two close but still separate entities. And to Rabbi Yaakov Berkowitz, who just go. Anyway, there he is. Lost so much weight I can't see you anymore. To all he's doing, he's a tremendous Talmid Chacham, and we're zocha now that he's helping us build our programs. And thank you for your efforts this morning, and for many of you have noticed, I'm sure, the tremendous upswing in a lot of our programming, and thank you to Yaakov for that. And of course, the special thanks to Rabbi Kowalski, who's not only giving the shiur today, but just it's like a shiur machine, just one after the other, every few weeks, one shiur after the other, and I think I get a lot of chizuk out of it, because people have different responsibilities in every job that they do, every position that they fill, they have a certain responsibility. And then you see these superstars, people who go above and beyond their responsibility. Rabbi Kowalski is not obligated, it's not in his contract that says you have to give a shiur every 4 weeks or so and push yourself to do that. He does that. It is a tremendous undertaking, and he does it with just happiness, doesn't look for a lot of fanfare. Just a real example for all of us to follow as to how a person pushes himself in Yiddishkeit. This is the 4th Yartzheit, my father's Atzal. And I said the other day, I think it's getting a little difficult, but much better than it used to be. So that itself is good. You don't mourn, obviously, any longer, but obviously I still miss him, and hopefully his guidance and his Torah and his hadracha in life stays with me. A couple of points I wanted to share, and then maybe tie it all together at the end with 4 separate points. My father was nifter suddenly. It was Motzei Shabbos, Chanuka, 4 years ago that I last spoke with him. And of course it was the day earlier, it was the 4th night of Chanuka. And he was recovering from some sort of, flu or whatever the case may be, and we spoke, and he was starting to feel a little better. And he actually had some people over, he was schmoozing with them and learning with my cousins, and Motzei Shabbos, that was around 9 o'clock. And then the next morning I found out that he was nifter. As they say, it was with the shika, it was nifter in his bed. The lesson that I take out of that, and think about it from time to time, but probably not enough, is that he had told me, he said, just not too long before he passed away, he said, no one never knows when they're going to be nifter. He said, but I feel like I got a good 10 or 15 years of good, solid life still in me. And then he was nifter, he was gone. So I think that, obviously for all of us, we can't put things off. I mean, it's not a chiddush, but it's just when you feel it personally like that, you realize how valuable every day is, and every day is such an opportunity for all of us. He was a major Talmid Chacham. He was one of the close Talmidim of the Rosh Yeshiva of Ruderman Zatzal. On his Matzeva, it says that he's a Talmud Muvik of the Rosh Yeshiva. I once said that my father himself asked Rosh Yeshiva one time, can he really be considered to be a Talmud of the Rosh Yeshivas? And the Rosh Yeshiva said, Nachman, to be a Talmud of mine, you have to know Shas. Father was nodding. Bavli, Yerushalmi, the Rishonim, most of the major Achronim, and at least 10,000 Shilas and Shuvas. So, according to the Rosh Hashiva, he was not maybe a Talmud Movik of his, but the community considered that he was. We had actually spoke to a number of Gedolim to make sure we got the right Lashon. The Rav was also involved in trying to come up with the right wording for his Matzeva. It was accepted that he was a Talmud Movik of the Rosh Hashiva. And I wanted to share an observation, besides from being a major Talmud Chacham, that I thought might be helpful. And that he was a very normal person. And I think that led to his success in learning, as I'll describe a little bit more in a moment or two. But he was very normal. Grew up in Baltimore, loved sports, loved the Colts. Rabbi Muse, remember the Colts when they were in Baltimore? He loved the Colts and the Orioles, and he enjoyed all of that. But and he would still say he'd still have to check the paper as he got older to see what happened last night. What did they do? What did the Orioles do? In the old days with Frank Robinson and Brooks Robinson, Boog Pal. But that didn't dominate his life. But he was normal. He was an American boy, of course. He was born in Baltimore in 1930. And really steiged. And I just feel, and he never said this to me, but I feel like he was very much in touch with the normalcy of his life. The Rav speaks about having normal balabatim. And I think my father, even though he achieved so much in learning, as a Talmud Movik of the Rosh Hashiva, but he always knew that he was normal. And he had the influences and the desires of a normal human being. He steiged tremendously, but he always recognized his humanity. I think in some way that's what made him very popular with a lot of the Talmidim and Bachrim that were close to him, is that people knew he wasn't just like one of the guys because he had grown so much in his learning, but he still was just a very normal person. His essence was all about learning, though. After the being normal, but his essence was all about learning. I think it was maybe said over here once before, but I think it's worthwhile to say that during his Hesped, Rabbi Heinemann brought down a very famous Gemara in Yuma and talked about how no one has any excuses when it comes to Talmud Torah. And Hillel, the Rav speaks about this. Hillel, no matter how poor he was, he still pushed himself in learning to incredible heights. And Eliezer ben Charson, no matter how wealthy he was, more describes how wealthy he was, he pushed himself to the incredible heights of learning. Yosef HaTzadik, who was challenged with tremendous situations with the wife of Potiphar, he overcame all that. And the Gemara says, so Hillel is Mechayev the Aniyim, and Eliezer ben Charson is Mechayev the Ashirim, and Yosef, it's unusual Lashon, is Mechayev the Rishoyim, meaning the taivas, the challenges that we have. A person can't say, well, I can't do it. You can. Yosef managed and overcame whatever was in front of him. Rabbi Heinemann added that he said, Nachman Klein, he is Mechayev the Balabatim. He's Mechayev Balabatim to grow in learning. He was a businessman for 40 years. He was in the car business. But he had his ups and downs. It was not like, he was a wealthy fellow who could take it easy and come home. And his learning, I remember as a kid, his learning started, he got up at 5. And one of my earliest memories, I think I was in shul with him in my pajamas at 5:15 or something like that if I got up too early. So his learning started off early in the morning, and after he went to work, he was back in the yeshiva in the early days, and that I can recall in the 60s, and then, of course, he would learn at night. He pushed himself. He pushed himself to steig after he left the yeshiva, which I think is, to me, a real challenge, in that think a lot of times we feel we're doing good just by we show up. We're here at night, very nice. We should get an award of some kind, which I'm sure we will, and that's good. But my father, he wanted to keep steiging. He felt that whatever level he had attained in yeshiva, that was not enough for him, just to say, well, I'm still learning. He wanted to keep growing, and he did. He was mechayev, according to Rabbi Nachman, he was mechayev the balabatim. I think that part of my father's success is that even though he had this tremendous kavod, I spoke once before about how his favorite thing was Messiah, at the same time, this kavod for Gedolei Yisrael, at the same time, I think he also understood, im harav doime l'malach Hashem tzivakos yivakesh Torah mipiu. If your Rebbe is doime to a malach, you should seek Torah from him. But I think he also understood that Gedolei HaTorah were not malachim. They were the highest level for a human being, but they were not malachim. I remember as a kid, one time, I had an argument with someone who's now a prominent person in Ner Yisrael, but we were just little kids together. And we were arguing of who's more chashuv, a person or a malach. I don't know how old we were, maybe 9 or 10 or something. So my father told us to go speak to the Rosh Yeshiva about it. So we went to the Rosh Yeshiva because a person should have that type of a opportunity to be close to such a person when you're very young. But anyway, it's a separate story. But went to the Rosh Yeshiva and we asked him, and he said, "What do you say? What do you say?" So I said, "I think a person is higher, and the other person, malach, is higher." So the Rosh Yeshiva said, "Person is higher." Because a person is just that. A person is a person who has to transform themselves to try to become as kaddish as possible with all the temptations, with all the challenges, with all the issues of life. And to do that, you're overcoming so many things. And that's why an Adam is at a much higher level than a Malach who doesn't have those challenges. So I think that in my father's situation, it was his normalcy. And it was the fact that he knew that he as a person, could have a time where maybe not everything was perfect. And he certainly understood, even by the biggest Gedolim, the reason he was machshav them, and if you read some of the things that he's written, he understood these were people the Rebbe Shem had created, who had reached such lofty heights. And I think that inspired him more than just thinking that we're dealing with malachim. Of course, I don't want to diminish that, because we know that this chain of Messiah, and they are in some way close to malach, but they're not really malachim. As Rosh Shiva said to me, they're people. And they'd achieved so much. We all have that opportunity and the recognition to appreciate that we are people, but we can achieve so much as well. Last year, when we were learning the Yartzheit, I said over something to give a little bit of a flavor for my father's appreciation for Torah learning. We were learning the sugya about Brichas Chasanim, and there was a discussion about different things about Brichas Chasanim. So my father had written down a very famous story that's said over in the name of the Yam Shel Shlomo. And I said that over just to give you a sense. He loved the story because it's powerful, but it's short, and it also shows you the chashivas of Torah. The Yam Shel Shlomo, it's said over that his city made a Siyam Hashas, and at the Siyam Hashas he was beaming with pride and happiness. And we talk sometimes about St. Louis should do this, the Siyam HaTorah, like other cities do. Maybe we'll do that. The Kollel and the shuls will put it together. But the Yam Shel Shlomo was very, very happy. He was just like, he couldn't contain himself with his happiness. And he gave a clap, and he said, "We should make a special bracha, shasimcha b'maynai, to appreciate, like we do by a chasana, that there's such a tremendous simchas haTorah right here, right now." And they made that bracha at the Siyam Hashas. Nice. Finished the Siyam. Shortly thereafter, it shouldn't happen to anybody, shortly thereafter, the shul was substantially damaged by a fire. And of course it was a tragedy. And the Am Shlomo said that he feels badly about it. I asked him why. He said because he feels that although he had the right kavana when it came to making this bracha to celebrate Torah learning at such a high level, he realizes now that saying a brichas chasanim shasimcha b'ma'ono is a diminishment of kavod Torah. Because ma'ono, it refers to the level in Shamayim called ma'on, which is one of the 7 heavens. And it's a tremendous, high, lofty goal, and that's where this simcha emanates, which comes down on the chassan and kala. Baishim is so happy after a shidduch is made. But the simcha that Hashem has when we learn is felt by the Kisei HaKavod. So the Am Shlomo said he feels that he takes some responsibility for the shul never having burned, because he was only saying that the simcha of learning is felt in Ma'an. But really the simcha of learning is felt in the Kisei HaKavod. So to me, the 3 or 4 points just to take away is, I think we can never put off our growth in learning, our growth in Torah, because we should live to 120, but we just don't know. We don't know. And we always have to make the right decisions. Number 2, we should push ourselves. My father pushed himself in learning, and Rabbi Heinemann says that he's mechayev the balabatim, everyone at their own level. He was, as I said, very normal. He recognized his normalcy, he recognized that he was a person, but he was also aware that a person is capable of growing to great heights. And then, of course, he recognized that Gedolei HaTorah were also people who had achieved these great and lofty heights. And he had tremendous chashivas for them because they were people who became doimet to Amalach Hashem. And lastly, when we're tired and it's difficult and stressed and money and family and all kind of things, if we're able to remember that the Torah that we're learning is appreciated by the Ribbonei Shalom, by the Kisei HaKavod, that itself will give us extra chizuk to grow, even amongst tough times. We all have those, but we can persevere, we can grow, we can reach tremendous heights. He should have a left of the Gan Eden.